My name is Kailey. I have a YouTube channel called Thedollsintherain, and I restore American Girl dolls. I'm going to walk you through how I restore a 1990s Felicity American Girl doll. Felicity Merriman is one of American Girl's 6 original historical characters. Originally, this doll would have sold for around $100, but in its current state, it is worth about $55. After I restore her, she'll probably be worth around $200. Felicity's biggest problems are definitely her missing arm. She has nail polish on all of her hands and feet. Her hair is very messy and the face paint is faded. So the first thing I'm doing is taking off Felicity's head. I'm doing this by untying her neck string. I'm using a sewing pin to help get the knot undone. Then once it's untied, I'm just pulling off her head. Now that her head is detached, I'm removing all of her stuffing. I'm just pulling it out by hand and collecting it in a pile so I can use it again later on. Now that Felicity is unstuffed, I'm going to take off her limbs. So I'm just untying these, and again I'm using a sewing pin to help undo the knots. Now I have Felicity's limbs detached, and next I'll be removing the tension cups from inside of her arms and legs. To do this, I'm putting her limbs into a Ziploc bag and boiling water in a kettle. I want the water to be boiling hot so the vinyl melts. Once the water is boiled, I'm putting the Ziploc bag into the water and leaving it there for about a minute. This is going to heat up the limbs so I can remove the tension cups without cracking the limbs. Now that the limbs are heated up, I'm using a pair of needle nose pliers to pull the tension cups out. Next, I'm going to be cleaning Felicity. Felicity has nail polish on her fingernails and her toenails. American Girl dolls should not have nail polish, so obviously her previous owner has painted them. To do this, I'm using non-acetone nail polish remover. It's very important to use non-acetone nail polish remover as acetone can damage vinyl. All I'm doing is putting the nail polish remover onto a cotton ball and rubbing the nail polish off. Once I have most of it off, I'm using a fine Q-tip to get into the crevices of the nails. Now that all of the nail polish is off, I'm using a magic eraser to clean the rest of her skin. Over time, American Girl dolls can get very dirty. You can see this when they are shiny. It's just a collection of grease and sometimes the oil from your hands. I'm also using a magic eraser on her face, but I'm being very careful not to scrub too hard on her lips and eyebrows because this can remove the paint. Now that Felicity is clean, I'm going to restring her. Now that all of her limbs are attached to her body, I am restuffing Felicity. Once I have all of the stuffing back in, I reattach Felicity's head. I just put it back into the opening and tie the string tight. Now I'm going to begin fixing Felicity's hair, which is one of the hardest parts of restoring an old doll. Her hair is very frizzy and matted. I use a spray bottle and a wired hairbrush to help get all of the knots out. When I'm brushing doll hair, I always start from the bottom of the wig and then work my way upwards, so I'm not dragging down the knots to the bottom of the hair. Next, I'll be straightening Felicity's hair. I'm doing this to remove the frizz. I'm making sure her hair is very wet, as using a straightener on dry American Girl doll hair can burn it. I finished straightening all of Felicity's hair, and usually I would stop there, but Felicity has pin curls at the front of her head, so I need to recurl those. I've straightened each of the 3 pin curls, and I'm going to be using a straw and boiling water to get them back to their original shape. I'm tying each little curl around a plastic straw and securing it in place with a bobby pin. Now I'm dipping the side of her head into boiling water. I'm leaving it there for about 30 seconds. Then I'm taking her head back out and leaving her to dry. Next, I'm just removing the plastic straws and her curls are back. Overall, Felicity's face paint has definitely faded over time. Her lips are faded, her teeth are faded, her cheeks are faded, and there is some damage to her eyebrows. I'm using watercolors to paint Felicity's face. I think it gives the dolls a really natural look, especially with the older dolls that didn't have as dramatic makeup as the newer dolls have. I'm using a very fine paintbrush and tracing over the lips that were already there. I do this in one thin layer at a time, and then I blot it with a tissue. Once I'm happy with the shape of her lips, I can move on to the cheeks. I'm using a slightly bigger paintbrush here. I always leave it slightly lighter than I would like because it dries dark. I'm using some white acrylic craft paint and very carefully filling in the teeth. Now that her teeth are done, my last step is to fill in her eyebrows. Now that Felicity is finished, I've tied her hair into her original hairstyle with a little white ribbon in the back. I've put her in this purple dress. This is from a newer edition of Felicity. Now she is ready to go on to her next owner and be loved once again.